Hello, everyone, and welcome to our seminar today. Thank you very much for joining us. I'm going to be talking today about one of the educational activities, projects that really excites me the most. It's something that almost every single one of our students here at Libra Education will do, or at least will recommend it. It's something that I myself as a student and many of our consultants also did. Even though I was a student a long time ago, it's still very, very much relevant today. Before we dive in though, let me tell you a little bit about myself for those that don't know me. My name's Oscar, and I'm the CEO of Libra Education. I was very fortunate in my own education. I studied first at Eton College for 2 years on a full scholarship, and there were 2 fantastic years. I studied maths, economics, physics, geography, and a little bit of French as well. Luckily, I did well enough there to secure a place to read land economy at the University of Cambridge. Those were 3 more happy years. I have to say it was a brilliant choice of subject for me. It had some writing, there was some element of presentation in there, and of course, some mathematical skills needed. After graduating, and in fact, after starting Libra Education, I was awarded another scholarship to study an accelerated MBA at the University of Oxford. So as I say, I've been very fortunate in my own education. Now, all of this has helped me to start and grow Libra Education, which is here to help students from the UK and overseas study at some of the top schools and universities across the world. Now, I said today that I would be talking about one of the activities that I am most passionate about. And hopefully, if you're here now already, you'll know that I'm going to be talking about essay prizes, and in particular, our own Libra Essay Prize, which is launching in the next couple of days, or may already have launched. Essay prizes are a fantastic opportunity for students to learn new skills, but also to gain value experience that can be put onto a university application in order to gain a place or even just to win an interview. But let's rewind a couple of steps. What exactly is an essay prize? An essay prize is a form of competition, which is typically open to students between the ages of 16 and 18. Students often have a choice of questions in a specific area. This might be within English. It might be a mathematical question. Equally, it could be science, medicine, law, or economics. There is a huge array of different essay prizes out there, including Libras. And so no matter what subject you're studying, even if you're really wanting to focus on maths or the sciences, there are essay prizes out there that can really help you to build skills and experience for your application. So it's worth listening and engaging with, no matter what your subject interest or background. So we've established that they are appropriate for every subject, but what do they ask you to do? Well, they are typically asking for 2,000 words, or between 1 and 2,000 words, on the subject that you've chosen. You are given a topic or you select it, and that is it. And this really is different to GCSEs or A-level studies. When you go through your A-levels and you write essays for A-level, first of all, you're told what you need to learn. Then you're taught the content, taught the essay technique, and finally, you write and submit your essay. It's a very sequential process. With the essay prize, it's much more loosely defined, and the emphasis is on you as the essay writer to do the learning and choose the direction, rather than be taught what your teacher is deciding. So once you've selected that title, it's up to you to decide what you need to know. It's up to you to find the best place to learn it, research it, create a plan, and actually start writing and refining it. It's a really, really big project, and it's challenging. It's hard. Whilst I was at Cambridge, I did one of these essays of about 2,000 words every 2 or 3 days. We had to do 5 essays like this every 2 weeks. Now, what I want you to think as a 16 to 18-year-old student thinking about entering an essay prize, you should be aiming for an essay of the same standard as any university student. The only difference is whereas a university student might be experienced enough to do one of these essays in 2 or 3 days, this is going to take you a lot longer. If this is your first time doing an essay prize, doing the research, doing the writing, it might take you 4 to 6 weeks, and that is absolutely fine. There is no rule about how much time you can spend on these essays. So the more research and planning and writing you do, the better it will be. The only goal that I want you to hold in your mind throughout this talk and throughout any essay prizes that you enter is that you're aiming for a university standard essay. Use it as a chance to stretch your skills and stretch your ability. Essay prizes, then by their nature, don't just focus on A-level content, and you have to be ready to go beyond that. But I'll talk a little bit more about how to do well in essay prizes in just a few moments' time. So if that's what they are, why are they so important? Well, I've touched on this a little bit already. Firstly, it is an amazing experience to put on your applications. Many of you will be thinking about your university applications and potentially already preparing yourself to make an application. Now, one of the key steps when you apply to the US or the UK or virtually any other university is you will have to write up a short personal statement, as we call it in the UK, or college essay, as it's called in the US. This is typically about 1 A4 sheet of paper where you write up your experience. It's a little bit like a CV when you apply for a job. Now, of course, you can put in many things in there, including what you've been taught at school. But what I know through my experience working with students all across the world is if you want to succeed at the very best universities, you need to have evidence of things you've done outside of school. And that's one of the key deliverables of an essay prize. It's not connected to your school. It's not something you've been told to do by your teachers. And it's required you as a student to do your own research. So it's a great thing to have. And it really shows the universities that you're willing to go above and beyond what you would normally do in a school in order to win that place or gain experience. If you're applying for a university that has interviews, the Ivy League perhaps, or Oxbridge or Russell Group or G5, Russell Group less so, but G5 and Oxbridge and Ivy League, you will want something in the interview that you can discuss. An essay prize is something that will be unique to you. You will have chosen your own topic. You will have done your own reading. No other student will have studied the exact same thing. So it's an opportunity for you to be unique, and you really need to embrace that. In fact, I would go so far as to say that next year, any student applying for social sciences or humanities must do an essay prize in order to be successful for the G5. I also think any student applying for the sciences, including maths, physics, computer science, is going to dramatically increase their chances of success at the G5, Ivy League and Russell Group if they take part in one of these competitions. Notice that I said take part. You don't even have to win these prizes in order to be able to discuss them in your application. It is enough to enter them and to show what you've done. The other side, and the other reason why you should enter these, is because it's a genuine opportunity to improve your skills. By doing these competitions, you're learning the skills that you're going to need at university. It means that when you arrive in your first week and you're given first 1, maybe 2, maybe even 3 essays to do in the first 2 weeks, rather than it be the first time you've had to approach an essay like this, it will be a familiar experience. It really will put you in a good position to go on and get a 2-1 or a first in your first year of university studies. Hopefully it means you'll enjoy that first year because you've had some practice in advance of writing a university standard essay. Hopefully then, I've persuaded you that essay prizes are worth entering. Now let's talk a little bit about the Libra Essay Prize, which is why we're here today. And let's talk about how you can do well in them. So if you bear with me one moment, I'm going to share my screen with you. And there we are. That should be appearing on your screens as we speak. So the Libra Essay Prize guidance for 2022. Thank you from me for expressing some interest and for being here today. Let's have a look at what it will entail. And here you are, the Libra Essay Prize, an annual essay prize for all students in years 12 and 13 looking to prepare for university. It doesn't matter if you're in the UK. It doesn't matter if you're overseas. If you're in years 12 and 13, that's your final 2 years of school, you are eligible to enter the essay prize. This year, we have 6 topics that you can take on. The first is sustainability. Next, we have crisis, return, connection, memory, and senses. These 6 words are stimuli around which you need to design your own question. Once you've chosen your stimuli, your first step is to set your own question for what you're going to take on. And let me give you just a couple of examples now. For example, for sustainability, you could set your essay title as the question, is sustainability really worth aiming for in 2022? Another example, for memory this time, would be perhaps from a scientific perspective. Why does our memory deteriorate as time moves forward? Now, I'm going to put up a lot more example questions here. And I want to stress that whilst we encourage you to choose your own questions, because it's something that you're genuinely interested in, you are absolutely allowed to choose one of the suggestions that I'm going to put on the screen in a few moments' time. The important thing is that you're really considering what your own subject interest is. If you're looking at science, choose a science question. If you're interested in philosophy, take a philosophical approach to one of these topic areas and try and be creative with it. When it comes to the question, there really are no rules. Be as creative as you want to be, or of course, use one of the prompt questions that I'm going to be putting up. So what are the actual rules? Well, we expect an essay of between 1,000 and 2,000 words. This essay should be submitted to info@libraeducation.co.uk, along with your name, your year group, and your school. You'll be pleased to know that there are several prizes to be won. And this wasn't something that I included when I talked about why you should enter essay prizes. The first 3 places will have a cash prize of £75, £50 and £25. The top 20 students will receive a highly commended certificate, which can be used in support of your university applications, showing that you've been highly commended for your essay. Finally, the top 20 submissions will receive 2 free sessions with our consultants. I should say that's the top 20 submissions from UK state schools. This is part of our commitment to help you envisage which universities you want to go to, and also help to make it a reality. So some further rules for you. The deadline submission is the 24th of June, 2022. Now you've got a long time to get this in. Most applications will receive in the final few days, but I don't think it's any surprise that every year the early submissions, where students have thought ahead, often tend to be of really high quality. So don't leave it until the last minute, because you'll have plenty of exams around then that you want to focus on. Try and get this done a little bit earlier. We will announce our winners on the 4th of July, so only 2 weeks later. And you'll appreciate, therefore, that we cannot accept any late entries. All winning essays will be published on our website. And if you have any questions at all about the rules, requirements, or about how to choose an essay title, please contact info@libraeducation.co.uk, and we will be happy to answer those questions for you. Now, we'd like you to stay up to date with our tips and tricks for how to do well. So please feel free to follow us on our Instagram for essay writing tips, updates on the Essay Prize, and also on university application guidance as well. You're also more than welcome to follow us on WeChat or any of our other platforms and channels. Generally, if you search Libra Education, you'll be able to find us. So I said to you that I would try and talk you through a little bit about how to excel whilst doing an essay prize. And so I want to give you some tips and tricks now to help you out. The first thing to think about is structure and purpose of your essay. If there's one single thing that is important for you to think about, it is the structure of the essay that you're writing. A really standard format would be as follows. An introduction. And that introduction needs to define your question. You need to explain to the reader, who may know very little about your chosen topic, what you're going to be taking on in that essay and how you are going to approach it. The better defined your question is, the easier you will find it to answer it. Then throughout the essay, you should have your main body paragraphs. Each one should tackle a single key point and analyze how it is relevant to your topic. One paragraph, one point. It's a very general rule, but it's really effective. It helps you to make sure that you're developing each point, because you can't have one paragraph which is 2 or 3 lines generally. You need to show evidence, you need to show support, and you need to show the research that you've done. If you're trying to argue that, for example, sustainability is not as important as we think it is, you'll need to link to authors or commentators that you've researched to say why that is the case. And finally, a conclusion. We want you to come to some form of decision at the end. And we're not going to be prescriptive about how that happens. You can draw your own conclusions, but we do want to see some of your critical analysis in these essays. So top tips, it doesn't have to be fancy. We just want to know what you're aiming to tell us, and we want you to take us on that journey in a really measured way. Of course, if you want to get fancy, don't let us stop you. But we need to be able to see the key points that are being explained. Now, I touched on this just now, but when you're quoting ideas, it's vitally important that you're showing where that information comes from. You'll appreciate that for us to know that you're not plagiarizing work, we need to see referencing. And in order for us to get a feel for where your ideas are coming from, it helps us to know who you've read, what books you've read, or what films you've seen, what documentaries you've watched, so that we know where those ideas are coming from. Having a really diverse range of sources is really important. It will make the essay more interesting. It will make your work more interesting. And it will give you a greater set of resources to draw on when you're writing. We request that you use the Harvard referencing style. Now that can be seen below on this slide. If you Google it, you'll find lots of descriptions there about how to do it. But if you're not sure, contact the Libra team, or of course use your teachers, friends and parents or guardians to explain what that is. So let's have a look at some potential questions that you could tackle. Starting with the idea of return. Two potential options include, when does retreat mean defeat? This might be a historical essay. If you could travel in time, which era would you visit? Again, this could be historical. It could be an English essay. You could even write this from a scientific historical perspective. We see in senses some examples here. Senseless, a scientific exploration of how COVID dulls our senses. Many essays we receive every year are highly topical. They borrow from things that students have seen in the news or things that they've studied, and you should do the same. Use the stimuli that you've witnessed around you to help you with your research and help generate ideas for what you could write. Looking at the idea of connection, we can ask the question, are people really more connected nowadays than in the past? This is perhaps touching on psychology or on technology. And in the question, does language affect the way we think? We're thinking about linguistics, again, science or social sciences. There's a really wide scope to how you can approach these questions. So please let your imaginations run wild and don't be afraid to think outside the box. There's some classical examples in here, such as with crisis. Crisis derives from the Latin crisis, meaning decision. How are decisions in difficult times best made? There's some great examples of leadership out there and decision making, whether it's throughout COVID or in the past. There's also some great examples of terrible decision making and terrible leadership, and it would be interesting to see that idea explored. Finally, just to touch on one more, with sustainability. To what extent is renewable energy a viable solution to climate change? Perhaps this is an economic review. It could be a scientific review. There's many ways to approach that question. So feel free to use these examples here and to focus on them. Feel free to tweak those questions or to ignore them entirely. The only requirement here is that you take on one of these 6 topics: return, connection, memory, senses, sustainability, or crisis. That is your job. Finally, just to finish off here, we have some essay examples. And I'm just going to call out some of the things in here that I think are done very effectively. The first is using Virginia Woolf's A Room of One's Own. And this was written by an English student, I'll just give you a couple of moments to read through that. So there's a couple of things that I really like in here. The first is the language that's being used. There's some great vocabulary in there that helps to really emphasize the points that are made. Paradoxically, veiled. These are two words that are almost poetic, and it elevates the standard of the writing. A second element that I think is really important in here is the precision of the language. In these sentences, we can see exactly what the meaning is, and there is an explanation of the logic behind it. So if we look at this first sentence, Woolf paradoxically presents the ideal of fiction as a carefully crafted web of lies that reveals fundamental truths of the human condition. Now that's a complex idea in there, but it's been meticulously crafted as a sentence. Woolf, the author, is, perhaps in spite of what we'd expect, presenting fiction as a web of lies, acknowledging the human condition. So it's a beautiful sentence and it's really clear what's being said. The final point I want to touch on here is the idea of an idea being developed and taking us on a journey. In that final half of the sentence, we can see both approaches were ultimately equally successful examples of the Woolfian ideal. So there's a conclusion being made in there at the end of that discussion. And that's what we really like to see, a vibrant discussion in an essay with an effective conclusion. Here is a biology essay. We will circulate these slides after this talk, so don't worry too much about reading every word in here. But one thing that I do want to call out is, obviously this is a science essay, and we see a lot more use of dates and data. The attention to detail here is really impressive. It tells us accurately how germ theory has been developed, what those dates were, and who the key people were that took part in that. Again, if you look at the second paragraph, we see in that sentence, ironically, the huge benefits of the microorganisms within us are now only being understood as a result of the consequences arising from their destruction. So it's giving us a firm kind of concluding point after the discussion that's gone before it. So do feel free when you're writing these essays to come to firm conclusions. We're not asking you to sit on the fence. So that is the Libra Essay Prize, and I'm delighted, as I said before, that you're interested in doing it. Hopefully I've convinced you that it's worth entering. All of this information is going to be available on our website. And in fact, it is available now, along with the full terms and conditions of entering. So all that leaves me to do is to say thank you for listening and good luck with your essays. I hope that you enjoy the process of writing them and you're able to submit a really competitive entry. If you have any questions, reach out to the Libra team. And of course, follow us on our social media, Instagram, WeChat, through our website for further information on the Essay Prize and all of our useful tips, tricks, and know-how. Thanks very much.